Okay, let's dive in. For so many people on a spiritual path, Autobiography of a Yogi is it's a cornerstone, right?
Absolutely. It's like this incredible roadmap up a huge mountain, shows you these amazing heights, these transcendent possibilities.
Yeah, the lives of masters, these incredible visions. It's a powerful call to wake up to something bigger through, prayer, meditation, that kind of thing.
Definitely. It sets the bar high. But then there's the flip side.
Exactly. After you feel that inspiration, maybe you even get a glimpse of that peak.
Yeah.
How do you actually live it down here?
Right. In the messy everyday stuff.
Yeah.
The traffic, the bills, the family arguments.
A valley, as some might call it.
That's the challenge, isn't it?
Yeah.
Bridging that gap between those, let's say, peak experiences and the just relentless demands of normal life. It can feel like two different worlds sometimes.
And that bridge, that's really what we're digging into today. We're looking at a book that's getting some buzz as maybe the essential missing chapter to Yogananda's work.
It's called The Power of the Ordinary by Sergi Saimora.
And the analysis we're drawing on makes a really interesting comparison, doesn't it? It positions Mora's book as complementing Yogananda's, focusing specifically on that integration piece.
Exactly. How do you embody these deep spiritual truths when you're, stuck in the middle of modern life? It speaks directly to that struggle.
So our mission for this deep dive is really to unpack why this book might be so important, especially perhaps if Yogananda's work resonated with you.
Yeah, exploring this idea that the divine isn't just like up there on the mountain peak.
And maybe it's closer, much closer, hidden right inside your ordinary life.
And we'll touch on some, let's just say, fascinating aspects of the author's own journey. Hints of a really deep connection to this particular spiritual lineage that, well, it might make you think.
Okay, so the analysis uses this great metaphor. Yogananda's autobiography is the mountain.
Right. The ascent, transcendence, prayer, meditation, incredible masters, extraordinary visions. It's that big upward call. Inspiring stuff.
And then the power of the ordinary comes in as the valley.
The valley of human experience. The core idea being that real, authentic awakening isn't about escaping the world or even just reaching the peak.
It's more like a descent.
A spiritual descent and integration. Finding the sacred right in the imperfections, the chaos, the vulnerability, the totally mundane moments.
The sacred is in the struggle, not just after it or beyond it.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And there's this incredibly powerful example from the book that the analysis highlights. A key realization the author had.
Not during some deep meditation, right?
No, not at all. It was on his bathroom floor.
Yeah.
After his divorce.
Yeah.
Just raw, messy, human.
Wow. Okay.
And he describes this clarity hitting him. He says something like, enlightenment wasn't waiting for me on some spiritual peak. It was here on a bathroom floor.
In the most ordinary and yet most authentic moment of my life.
Yeah, I remember reading that. It's potent.
It really grounds it, doesn't it? Takes spirituality out of the clouds and puts it right onto the bathroom floor. It's a total reframe, and that's central to the analysis we're looking at. Mora's book as this indispensable missing chapter.
Providing that practical, embodied, deeply human piece that makes Yogananda's transcendent vision livable day to day.
It bridges that gap we talked about. Mountaintop view to valley floor reality.
Exactly. The analysis quotes the book's intention to complete that circle. Not by escaping to the heights, but by descending with humility into the valley of the human.
Where every crack and every tear is part of the sacred landscape.
That's beautiful. It's not saying the ascent isn't important.
Not at all. But it's saying that coming back down fully into our humanity is just as crucial, just as sacred for the whole picture.
So why now? Why is this valley perspective maybe more critical today? Does the analysis touch on that? It suggests a kind of evolution in spiritual teaching.
It does. It suggests that back in Yogananda's time, early 20th century, you really needed that dramatic, awe-inspiring call.
Right. With materialism rising, you had to show people the spiritual realm was even real, maybe through extraordinary examples.
Exactly, to cut through the noise. But today, many people have heard that call. They believe the peak exists. The challenge now is different. It's more like, okay, I believe it. I've maybe even touched it. But how do I keep it? How do I integrate it when my boss is yelling at me or the kids are sick?
That's precisely the point the analysis makes. This is why the valley experience, the integration piece, has become so vital for a truly sustainable whole awakening.
It's that shift from just aspiring to the spiritual.
To actually being spiritual, embodied, in the middle of everything.
And this has bigger implications too, right? Like spirituality becoming less about escaping the world.
And more about being fully present in it. Redefining enlightenment maybe, not as some fixed state you achieve and you're done.
But more like a process. Continuous, dynamic, probably messy.
Definitely messy. Living authentically, moment by moment. Accessible to everyone, not just monks in caves or people doing hours of specific techniques.
It feels more democratized somehow, and it also seems to push back against that idea of spiritual bypass, you know?
Oh, absolutely. Using spiritual concepts to avoid dealing with your actual human stuff, your wounds, your problems. This approach says, no, you gotta engage with that. Deeply.
That's where the real transformation happens. Within the experience.
And the author's own life story, as laid out in the analysis, is presented as almost a textbook example of this valley path. It didn't start with bliss and light.
No, it started with wounds, right? Childhood stuff.
Yeah, the analysis talks about early traumas being like cracks, but cracks where light could get in, paradoxically.
Like being wrongly blamed as a kid, and it affecting him physically.
Exactly. A knot in his throat, a weight that became stone. The body remembers, even when the mind tries to forget or cope.
He developed ways to cope, like dissociation, becoming a spectator.
Right, watching his life from a distance. But the analysis points out that the body held on to the truth. These early wounds weren't just problems to fix, they were kind of foundational, setting the stage for finding the sacred in imperfection.
Which leads back to that bathroom floor moment, the divorce, the breakdown.
Described as a silent awakening. Not bright lights, but a shattering of old ways of seeking, of needing external validation or peak experiences.
Finding the divine right there in the middle of the pain. He called it a demolition, not illumination.
Yeah, a demolition of the ego's need to be special or somewhere else. And that pushed him towards listening to his body.
There's that hospital scene mentioned in the analysis with his mother.
Powerful stuff. Suppressed emotions, just bursting out laughter, tears, apparently sounded obscene. A total visceral release.
Yeah.
Not planned, not meditated upon, just raw bodily truth.
And that led to the realization
That the voice of the body never lies. It only speaks a language I had forgotten how to hear. That's a direct quote highlighted in the analysis.
So spiritual practice becomes embodied presence, the body as the temple, the oracle.
Exactly, which is a huge reorientation, especially if you come from traditions that maybe emphasize transcending the body or seeing it as lesser. This says, no, the body is ground zero for awakening.
Okay, now for listeners familiar with Autobiography of a Yogi, this is where it gets particularly intriguing. The analysis details some really striking connections between this author and the Yogananda lineage.
Yes, presented less as coincidence, more as, signs of a guided path, almost orchestrated. Like the story of him finding Yogananda's book.
In a bookstore, feeling drawn to it.
Yeah, like an electric current. He said, as if the book recognized me. And then
a man in the saffron turban appears, points to the book,
and says, this book is very good. And the author later sees a picture in the book and recognizes the man as Lahiri Mahasaya.
Yogananda's guru's guru. Wow, that's a direct line right there.
A very direct line. Then the analysis brings in this idea of Tulku recognized reincarnations in some traditions, and the author's connection to a consciousness group called Kuthumi.
And how does that connect back?
Well, figures like Sri Yukteswar, Yogananda's guru, are associated with this Kuthumi collective in some esoteric teachings. The author felt this immediate recognition with Lahiri Mahasaya, which this framework helped make sense of.
And there was that sign, the incense.
Yes. When the name Kuthumi was first spoken to him, apparently the room filled with this dense and sacred aroma of incense.
These threads together to suggest what? That his journey is somehow deeply linked, maybe even destined.
It certainly paints a picture of a profound, perhaps ancient connection, suggesting his path might be an intentional continuation or, like we said, a completion of the work started by that lineage. It speaks volumes, especially to those who feel connected to Yogananda.
There were other signs too, right, Babaji?
Yeah, seeing a postcard of Haida Khan Babaji, Lahiri Mahasaya's guru, referred to as the boss. Little nudges like that.
And the synchronicities, the numbers.
Recurring numbers, 5 and 2, adding up to 7. Like his theater ticket for a play about Yogananda, row 5, seat 2. But the big one.
The publication date of The Power of the Ordinary, March 7th, 2025.
Which is exactly 73 years to the day after Yogananda consciously left his body, March 7th, 1952.
Okay, that's pretty specific.
The analysis calls it soul transmission synchronized to perfection. And seeing that play about Yogananda happened exactly 73 years after the departure, too. Even the venue, the Apollo Theater, Apollo being the god of light and truth. It all adds to this narrative of a guided, meaningful connection.
It really invites you, especially if you resonate with Yogananda's work, to consider this author's message as potentially significant for you, coming from this deeply connected space.
And importantly, this journey he describes isn't about hiding away. It's about using the world, the ordinary world, as the classroom.
His career struggles, for instance, venture capital, telemarketing.
The analysis frames them as perfect mirrors, showing him his own internal fragmentation, corporate bullying, dehumanizing jobs, not just obstacles, but intense training.
Forcing him to align with his values.
Exactly. Refusing to go back to that telemarketing job wasn't just quitting, it was an act of spiritual integrity. Challenging unethical stuff at another company stemmed from his own wound, defending dignity. The mundane world was the spiritual path.
And family sounds like it was maybe the toughest classroom.
Often is, isn't it? Healing ancestral wounds, dealing with his father's limited way of loving, which echoed his childhood stuff.
The analysis mentions writing letters to inner figures.
Yeah, a ritual of reconciliation. Writing to his interior father, interior mother, that wounded child, giving voice to the pain. Powerful inner work.
And the impact of the divorce, especially his son's question. Why did you abandon us?
Oof, yeah. That forced him, according to the analysis, to learn the difference between just being physically present and truly accompanying someone, listening deeply.
So it's personal healing, but also breaking family patterns. Intergenerational. Deeply human.
And then there's embracing duality. His soul blueprint, as the analysis calls it.
Builder and channel energies, material and spiritual.
Right. And realizing they weren't opposed. I didn't come to choose between building companies or transforming souls. I came to do both. That's a quote.
So integrating things like financial health, challenging that inner resistance to the material.
Yeah, seeing it as a fourth health, even learning to receive, like accepting that car from his father was part of it. Letting go of that pride disguised as spiritual independence.
Which feels like a direct complement to paths that might emphasize more detachment from the material. This says, no, engage consciously.
And all this led to a different way of serving, moving away from needing to be special.
Embracing the extraordinary freedom of being completely ordinary. I like that.
Realizing the search for specialness was maybe a way to avoid just being. He said, I no longer needed to be special. True mastery and humility, not heroism.
Which is reflected in his coaching, not teaching, but facilitating.
Exactly. Facilitating remembering, holding space, being a clean mirror. He says, I don't add anything. I allow the essential to reveal itself, from hero to channel.
And vulnerability is key here, sharing his own messiness.
Yes. Sharing his cracks and struggles as a beacon for others, giving permission. I've bared myself so others won't fear doing so.
The power isn't in avoiding struggle, but seeing the struggle itself as sacred.
The willingness to keep showing up day after day with all our cracks exposed. That's the heart of it. Liberation isn't escaping humanity,
but fully inhabiting it, embracing the fear, but moving forward anyway.
Exactly. Vulnerability is strength.
So bringing it all together, for anyone touched by an autobiography of a yogi, if that book showed the way up the mountain,
then the power of the ordinary is like the essential guide for the next step, how to live that truth by descending into your humanity.
The quote was, to continue ascending, you must dare descend more deeply into your humanity.
Yeah. It reframes awakening completely. Not a destination, not linear.
But a spiral.
A spiral, yeah. Revisiting things, but on a different level each time. Deeper understanding, more compassion, more honesty, more human.
And the invitation from the book is for everyone, isn't it? Find the divine right here, in your ordinary life.
Your struggles, your vulnerability, your imperfections, they're portals. The extraordinary is hidden in the simple stuff.
Your real story begins now, in your next breath, in your next step, in that ordinary moment about to reveal itself as a portal.
Leaves you with a big question, doesn't it?
It really does. If the universe speaks through ordinary signs through your life and integration is the path, what missing chapter is waiting in your ordinary life?
How could seeing your daily struggles, not as roadblocks, but as the sacred ground itself, how could that change things for you?
It's a profound thought, and it definitely makes the power of the ordinary sound like a crucial companion piece for anyone inspired by that journey up the mountain.